Are you tired of showing up to every operation with some major Chaticus energy? The Melta Rifle has been it's been the hotness since launch day, pun intended, and for good reason. Melta Rifles are exceptional at Minoris clearing and racking up a big kill count at the end of the op with a big number under your ranged damage stat line, and everybody loves seeing their numbers up on top. And there's a lot to talk about in that statement alone. A lot to unpack about the disconnect between the numbers you see on that screen and the actual tangible value of your performance. But that's, for another discussion. Today, what I want to do is I want to offer some alternatives to Melta Rifles. So whether you're a Vanguard who only uses our beloved flaming shotgun, or a tactical that just never broke away from the Melta to level up other alternatives, or you're a heavy that never felt any kind of a need to holster the multi-Melta for anything else, well, we've got 3 classes that have access to the Melta, so let's see what you can do on each of them to continue bringing the pain when it comes to Minoris control, while also maybe opening up some new pathways to success. Let's kick things off with the Vanguard, and I will timestamp all of these classes so you can skip around to the one that's most applicable to you, and also know that there's no gameplay in the video that's going to be below the Ruthless tier. It's all going to be Ruthless and above. All right, let's talk about Decimus. He likes to get up close, look his enemies in the eyes while he rips their arms off. It's kind of his thing. And honestly, I wish there were more options for the Vanguard class when it comes to primary weapons, but here's the bottom line. The Oculus Bolt is, in my opinion, the worst primary weapon in the game. Don't use it. It's trash, does trash damage, has trash accuracy. It's really not worth using. But the Instigator, on the other hand, that's a different story, okay? This is a 3-round burst rifle that actually cooks in operations on all difficulties. At first, I didn't like the idea of being a Vanguard with a medium-range weapon. It seemed sort of contradictory to his nature. But the more I used it and understood its purpose, the more I realized the weapon really does complement the Vanguard kit quite well. Let's chat about the 2 key parts of the Instigator's game, Minoris killing and Majoris killing. So if we're wanting something that can clear Minoris enemies as an alternative to the Melta, the Instigator certainly does that well. It has a target penetration value of 2 at base. We bump that up to 3 in the perk tree. That's going to help you absolutely chew through trash mobs of Minoris enemies and over-penetrate crowds to put them down quickly. But the difference is that you get to do that on your way in to thin the herd out a bit, right? It's literally in the name. You're instigating combat with the rifle. And once you've eliminated the smaller targets, now you can grapple in and start leaning into your melee skill set to take down the Majoris guys. And on the topic of Majoris enemies, we now know the actual damage values of these weapons. If you missed that video, I actually tested all of them out and published an infographic so you know exactly how much damage your weapons of choice are doing. The Instigator is an interesting beast. So this weapon does low damage overall to Majoris enemies with melee weapons, but it does double damage to Majoris enemies with ranged weapons, right? So the Instigator is extremely deadly against things like snipers, those Venom Rifle guys, the Vine Spreaders. It's also seriously good at Chaos Majors because they've all got firearms. So using the Instigator well means understanding what it's good at and leaning into that, right? So as a Vanguard, you want to chew up big groups of ads from a distance on your approach, target the ranged guys and pump some shots into them for big damage, and then use your grapple to get in there and start using Decimus's melee skills to take down the melee enemies. So ultimately, the Instigator is sort of the yin to Decimus's yang. It helps balance out his kit. And a polite reminder that if you grapple into an enemy, hey, just hipfire a burst or 2 from the Instigator for huge damage into their faces while they're debuffed with the perk in your Vanguard tree that makes enemies more vulnerable to ranged damage after a swift kick in the face. All right, let's move on. Next up, let's talk about the tactical. I'm just going to be honest with you here, okay? The Melta Rifle makes little to no sense on tactical. If you're playing tactical, I have to highly encourage you to move away from the Melta Rifle sooner than later. The tactical kit helps you leverage bolt weapons and take them to new heights. Leave the Melta ad clearing to the other guys. That's not the tactical's value. Quite frankly, I'd be a lying hipster if I recommended anything other than the standard bolt rifle with the underbarrel grenade launcher. But I'm still going to do that in a minute. But first, though, I do have to get this out of the way first. We'll get to some other alternatives. But first, I have to openly acknowledge that the bolt rifle with the grenade launcher is arguably among the top 3 best weapons in the game. The bolt rifle does 17 damage to the head to ranged enemies, which is really high compared to other bolt weapons. But the real power is in the grenade launcher, which clears Minoris enemies insanely well. It's every bit as good as the Melta Rifle at clearing Minoris enemies, but you can do it from basically any range instead of only at point blank. But the grenades themselves, beyond splash damage on small guys, they do crazy damage to Majoris enemies. For comparison's sake, the Melta Rifle only does 29 damage to a Majoris enemy with melee weapons, but the grenade launcher will do 110 damage per shot. That's almost quadruple the damage of the Melta Rifle. But the grenades also shoot faster than a Melta, and the second the Majoris enemy dies, you get all of your grenades refunded with Emperor's Vengeance. There really is no comparison. If you're using a Melta on tactical, then there's no other way to say it other than you're doing it wrong, right? The only reason to run a Melta is just because you like it and you feel like using it for fun. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that. But just know that you're playing with a tactical disadvantage if you do that. Okay, so now that we got the obvious answer out of the way, I do want to take a moment to recommend the other bolt rifles for the tactical as well. I know nothing compares to the grenade launcher variant, but quite honestly, you really can't go wrong by choosing the heavy bolt rifle or the auto bolt. And I know people like to hate on the auto bolt, but the auto bolt definitely has its purpose. With Rampage in the perk tree and deep magazines, the auto bolt can tear through waves of Minoris enemies. Things like the Inferno Finale, it really shines there. It still kills in one shot to the head, same as the heavy bolt, but it has a faster rate of fire, it penetrates through targets like all other bolts do. It's just downright fun. And since you're a tactical, you can just use your scan to debuff larger targets and kill them in one hit if they're extremists or below, or help you, help your team cook a Terminus enemy with respectable damage with the auto bolt on a scanned target. The heavy bolt rifle is also just great at clearing trash mobs. It's quite similar to the auto bolt in that regard. It just shoots slower, but it's more accurate. So it really just depends on your personal preference. Pick whichever one you prefer. I actually prefer the auto bolt, but I'm fully aware that most people prefer the heavy bolt. Just know that both of them suck at single target damage, right? They really are there for Minoris enemy clearing, and they do that really well. The standard bolt pistol, though, does more damage to single targets, like Majoris enemies, than both the auto bolt and the heavy bolt. They're some of the worst single target DPS weapons in the game. Honestly, that doesn't bother me. I use them on all the little guys, and when the Majoris gang walks in, I just get right up in their faces and let my chainsword do the talking. At the end of the day, the tactical has a lot of choices. It's a well-rounded class. But the Melta Rifle is one of the worst picks for this class, so I recommend picking any of the other options I mentioned here. Heck, I think the Stalker is an incredible choice for tactical, but that's not really a Melta alternative since that's more about single target damage and less about Minoris killing. Let's move on to the Heavy. The Heavy used to be my least favorite class to play in the game, not because I thought it was bad, but because I thought it was boring. The multi-Melta was everyone's recommendation from day one, and it's a crazy effective weapon with no doubt. The range is exceptional for a Melta. The stagger effect on Majoris mobs is useful. I mean, it definitely earns its keep, but holy cow is it boring to me. It's just step, step, boom, step, step, boom, from start to finish in the operation, 30 minutes straight. That's what we're doing. Then I moved on to the Heavy Bolter, and that gun is super fun, right? And it's highly effective. I've got a full video on my Heavy Bolter build, which you should definitely check out. And then finally, I moved on to the Heavy Plasma, and that's what I want to talk about in today's video. The Heavy Plasma is, in my opinion, the best weapon in the game, right? This is the king of S-tier weapons. It simply does things that the Melta cannot even possibly dream of doing, and it also does what the Melta does just as well. So the splash damage is great for clearing Minoris enemies. You'll always end up on top in the kills department with the Heavy Plasma if you're using it properly because of that. But you're also going to be absolutely cooking big enemies. You can one-shot Majoris enemies. You can destroy Zoanthropes in 2 shots. The other day, we baked a Carnifex on lethal in under 10 seconds with our tactical scanned him, and then I just let loose with a barrage of charged shots. And by the way, uncharged shots, an uncharged shot does 60 damage, okay? That's more damage than the multi-Melta's 56. And the Heavy Plasma can do it from anywhere on the map instead of only up close. But then the charged shot does 269 damage at base. You can buff that and get that up even higher, by the way. But 269 damage in a huge radius, allowing you to one-shot whole groups of Majoris enemies. I mean, it's a literal nuke. That's 37% more damage than a fully charged Las Fusel shot, but it covers a wide area and hits every enemy within the blast zone. To be completely honest, once you've leveled up the heavy plasma, you'll probably never feel the need to use a multi-melta again. It can't do the damage that the plasma can do. It can't do the single target destruction that the heavy plasma can do. And using 6 shots to stagger a group of Majoris enemies and get them all executable is cool, but you could use less ammo and blow the entire group up in one charged shot with the heavy plasma. I really can't recommend the heavy plasma enough, so get on that grind, brothers. It's the weapon that I have used now to clear every single operation on the lethal difficulty on my heavy. I've done it on the other classes as well, but the heavy with the heavy plasma just made it feel so much more manageable. So there you have it. Those are my recommendations for Melta alternatives in Space Marine 2. I know it's really easy to just stick with what works, but there are things that work better out there. And I think you'll be doing yourself a favor by exploring other options, and at the same time, you'll be creating new content for yourself to explore, since using other weapons and other builds, it really does dramatically shake up how you engage with the game on a base level. So go forward in confidence, brothers, and go destroy the enemies of the Emperor. With that, I say thanks so much for watching the video today. Feel free to leave a like on it, only if you enjoyed it, and subscribe for additional Space Marine 2 coverage. If you're looking for a community of gamers that's grinding this game often and helping each other out, check out the link in the description or pinned comment to our Patreon page, and check out that super cheap $3 tier to gain access to our private Discord. Be warm and well fed, my friends. Courage and honor.